I'm going to start recording us here. So let me start with some prayer. Father, we just thank you for the group here and each of the missions and gatherings that you've called us to be a part of. And we just ask for your advice and your wisdom and not your advice, your guidance, your direction. We want to follow your will, not our own. And we ask for your direction and our discernment of your direction this morning. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So what I wanted to do is just kind of go back over some of the things we worked on and just kind of visit them. So the first thing, we have said that fundraising is something you do in community. And it's not necessarily during this class that you get people together, but we try to encourage that. Most good fundraisers really have difficulty doing it unless they have a team. And that team can include board members who are helping them. It can include assistants that are helping them. It can include prayer warriors who are praying along with them. But having a team that helps you in the project, because otherwise fundraising is hard work and it's easy to put it off. But having a team, there's a certain accountability, a certain encouragement, a certain camaraderie. And so what I wanted to do is just visit that just a bit in terms of where your teams are. And so, like, for example, I have some people that help me with the writing of it. We have some weekly meetings where we just talk through kind of our strategies. And what that does is forces me in good ways to focus every week to have a discussion about how's our letter of inquiries going, how's our movement going, how's our letters going, all of that. It just is a pretty important thing. Now, you may not do that every week. So let me stop at this point. Patricia, do you have a team, and who's on that team, and how's that working so far? And if you don't, what are you thinking about building your team that helps you with fundraising? So Patricia, go ahead.
Okay. I would say at this time I don't really have an official team. I think as we talked about earlier on, I'm kind of in a place where I'm trying to discern what kind of platform, I don't know if that's the best word, that God would have for me to move forward with what I'm doing, or what he's placed in my heart. I'm just prayerful about kind of how I've moved into this space, because I think it's different than a lot of people. It's not like I worked for a ministry, or all of this was just birthed out of me being a person, just a citizen of the kingdom, having deep questions about how we as a church were interacting with hard situations in our city, and disparity, and why isn't the church using that beautiful power of God that we talk about, sing about, pray about, try to live in? Why aren't we dealing with the real issues of the city? So this started as just a very intimate question between me and God. And then I felt like part of my journey, part of his response to me was, let me make you aware of the narrative and the revelation I've been releasing. And so in came BGU, in came CCDA. And, when BGU came in, it was like, I took the Fresno course, and then, when you do all of your homework and everything, it's to be experiential. So apply what you're doing. So I came back from Fresno to apply what I was doing, but it wasn't like I joined a mission alliance or my church is doing this. So I'm just trying to understand what God really wants me to do. So I'm not really formed in an organization or something like that.
That makes sense. And so part of it is your personal learning community. You have some people that are good friends that are praying. And so with you, it might make sense, again, it's not necessarily a fundraising team, but it is a discerning of direction team. And it may not be your full personal learning community, but just some people that you're meeting with on a regular basis, could be once a month, just to pray over what God is doing in your life, to give them the latest update, and just to hear their discernment and their feedback. because there's an intentionality when God starts calling you to, and your call is a broader call. It's a mantle call. You're waiting for God to reveal. But it helps to have a community that keeps you encouraged and keeps you focused, and there's an intentionality, even if it's just praying, once a month. There's an intentionality in that.
Yeah, that's good. Probably, of course, in God's sovereignty, probably a good, maybe 5 years ago at least. I know the Lord was directing me to connect very strongly to our intercessory team at my church. So I am a part of our intercessory team. I am with them about a month. I kind of give them ministry updates, very detailed, where they pray for me. In terms of general teams like that, I do feel like they are the strongest kind of prayer covering. Now, they're not in a place where they would really, advise me on like the direction. They just kind of pray for, safety or clarity and things like that. Now, on the advisory part, I am prayerful about what direction to go in with like my PLC. One of the challenges I feel as a, I guess emerging kind of leader, or if God does want me to move forward in this, it seems like it's challenging really to find, consistent, I don't know, advisors or mentors. It seems everybody is very busy. I've recently went to my PLC and asked them if they still wanted to be a part of that, because, we just haven't really been connecting. It's very hard to get them together. And, I have one, at least one person who said that they would like to continue. One person stepped down. I think this is something both me and my husband are in prayer about, is really finding a good place for leadership in our life. Seems everybody is just busy to like really even sit down and talk. And so, on one end, that's caused me to be a little more sensitive to younger millennials. I try to spend time with the 20-somethings myself, but, people who are a little more seasoned than me, they seem just busy. And I've just been very prayerful about having, I guess, a good perspective about that. Like, I don't know, what does that mean? Or, I don't know. Like I said, I didn't walk into this where there was a leader saying, hey, do this, we will meet with you and walk with you. It just didn't happen like that for me. So I'm just prayerful about really what does he want me to do?
Well, that makes sense. That makes sense. We have found that the personal learning community is one device to help you find those people, because it gives them a task. It gives them a regular meeting. The other thing is, sometimes when you have a regular meeting, first Friday of every month, for breakfast and prayer, something like that, what that does is allows busy people to go, oh, this is going to happen every month. I enjoy Patricia. Every time I'm with her, it's exciting. I get something out of it. It's just, I get crammed in my schedule. But if I put it on my schedule in advance, they may not show for the first couple of months, but then they get kind of into the routine and enjoy it. And you keep it fresh. You add things. There's movement going forward. But it seems to be a way to help connect to mentors and to connect to groups by having kind of a regular time, even if it's just prayer, and then keeping it fresh, not letting it just get stale. So people sometimes need to have some advance warning to get those things on their calendar, because they're typically things they enjoy doing. They just are crowded out by the other things. So just one way to think about the strategy on that.
Yeah, that is a good thought.
And you're serious enough to say, God is calling something to happen, in our city. And it's about, employing the CCDA principles in a way that we have an ongoing something. We don't know what that is yet. So let's have at least a monthly time of prayer. and just an update. What's happening with some CCDA things? What's happening with each other? Um, and people get used to saying this is a time for encouragement to think about, our city, think about what Cleveland is, um, and they just get used to it every month. And it's interesting how you start getting some people that decide that's the best thing. They always show up, and some people don't, and it kind of weeds out the people that are going to be part of the movement, eventually part of your fundraising team, as well as your leadership team and board members.
Yep, that's a good thought. I appreciate that.
So, Vitaly, there's actually at this point a weekly meeting of the World Evangelical Alliance the fundraising team. It's usually on Tuesday afternoons, but it's going to be too late for you. And it's usually Brian Stiller, Nicole Johnson. So Brian, Brian likes you a whole lot. He's a big fan of yours. It's because I like it. And,
well, it's good. Finally, somebody likes me.
And it's Nicole Johnson, who's with One Hope, and it's Valerie Perry out of the Wheaton office. But and that's the time that seems to work for them. But what I'm thinking of is eventually working with the regional general secretaries. My hope is we're going to do a meeting in early September. I've gotten Thomas on my schedule. That there would be a group that every regional general secretary would have somebody like you that's thinking about fundraising for their region. And so I'm working on trying to build a team, and we would do it at a time that's more convenient to you, because at this point, I'm having to work with Brian and Valerie and Nicole, all of which are in the United States, which is not a convenient time for you. So we're working on a team for the World Evangelical Fundraising that would have a representative from every regional secretary. Every one of them has said they want to do it. You're the first. So we're working on your team. It's just not there yet. So in the meantime, it's going to be you and me, and probably we'll bring in Brian and Valerie at times. But we'll keep working, so you'll be kind of our lead, or the lead person for that. However, as you think about just some folks in your local community, friends that you would like to journey this with you, that doesn't hurt either. Just to have, some people that are kind of with you, and even if you wanted somebody to join on the call tomorrow morning, the Zoom tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon for you, just so that they're part of the conversation, that's always welcome. It's just encouraging to have a companion or a few to work through this with you.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Of course, it's very interesting topic for Russia, but somehow, people in Russia think that fundraising is a kind of hopeless idea,
right?
Because historically in Russia, people get funds from like government or from something, but not like it's very new for Russia, like for maybe for many communist countries.
Yes.
And I'm really eager to go. Well, I'm willing to learn, and hopefully sooner or later will be useful information. Another difficulty, we are in a Russian-speaking world. Very few people, well, not very few. Some people speak English, and most of them are not working with Christian organization. They're just working for some business organization, earn good salary or money or whatever.
Yes.
And something like this, yeah.
But if you, and I understand that's a huge, but if you have a younger friend that you're mentoring or is looking up to you, sometimes they know more about social media and video making and some of the things you may employ later. And just, and if they have, even if they can't join me because I only speak English, just having them come alongside you, and you kind of start saying, can you help me think about some social media strategies, some writing strategies? The younger people often just appreciate the time from an older person, even though you're asking their help. That's another thought, is how you build your team. But just always are thinking about who has God perhaps put in my path that could be part of my team that I journey with in my fundraising strategy.
Well, like for example, like in Russia, several, like we can say, public Orthodox companies or like organizations, they raise good amount of money but well, they do some kind of not religious activity, but like some social activity,
Right.
helping children, helping orphanages, helping, and people are giving a lot of money. Like they use all kind of ideas, like you can send SMS, you can like do, and and like I'm still wondering how I can like basically sell this idea that we have to support the evangelical church, because here in Russia we are like second or third class of people. Even sometimes they view us like enemies, or like even American spies or something like this. It's hard to say, but this is what like reality.
No, that's a challenge, and so part of it is again, part of we'll talk about tomorrow. But how do you structure your message in a way that people can get it easily? And we'll play with that a little bit tomorrow. But one
Okay,
of the ways,
right.
one of the ways to do it. So what we're working on in the United States is the word evangelical in the United States is a political designation, meaning that you have political views, and that's not accurate, but it is where the media has placed it. So the word evangelical is actually a negative word for most of the United States because it's become angry political people that are screaming and are Trump supporters and all that. And most evangelicals would not be described that way, but that's how the media has described us. And so there is a process being talked about on how to reshape and rebrand the evangelical message. And so one of our models, believe it or not, I don't support their religion, but I do. They have a good model. Is the Mormons? Okay, and the Mormons have created an amazing series of videos, and the videos start off by having this, and they don't label this is a Mormon video. There's a video they use them in advertising, and it's this very interesting person. Like one of them is a woman. She's talking, and she says, "I'm a drummer for a rock band." And then it switches, and she's with her family, and I'm a soccer mom, and they're having this great interaction. You go, this woman is just amazing. A young woman that's a rock band drummer and gives to people. She's full of compassion toward her neighbors. She's a great mother. She's a soccer mom, driving her small kids around to soccer. And at the end, the final statement is the camera comes close and she says, "My name is so-and-so. I'm a rock band drummer. I'm a soccer mom. I love my community, and I'm a Mormon." Cut. Okay. And you go, whoa, well, basically the message is we are Mormons and we are normal. That's what, so every one of them has that basic message. So you've got another, all interesting people you would say, I would wish they were my neighbor. I could model after them. And they say they know that in the United States, everybody thinks Mormons are weirdos. They live in caves and men have 15 wives and all this kind of weirdness. And so what they're trying to do is offset that. So the campaign we're doing with evangelicals is showing evangelicals and personal stories. Their movies, we're thinking about the scripts of the movies, giving to the community, because the evangelicals in the United States give more money and more volunteer time to the community than any other group combined. Okay, it's huge, or any other group, single group. And so what we're trying to do is come up with a message that say, we are evangelicals, we make a difference in our communities. And so the term is, we benefit society. We have to get shorter. We're evangelicals, we do good, and people go, when they're watching the videos, they're going, wow, these people are doing good things. They're helping orphans, they're helping with at-risk youth, they're giving to their communities, and that story is told, and at the end it is, I'm an evangelical, I do good. And so the reshaping is not I'm an evangelical and I'm a Trump supporter, or I yell at people and I get angry about stuff. Instead, it's I do good. And so that's one of the things that even in a fundraising approach, you start thinking about, what is that one core message that every single one of your social media, everything's about. That makes sense.
Well, I agree with you. I was try to understand or learn about how we can influence a point of view of society. And like especially in Russia, we're talking about like how all kind of political campaign can influence people.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, I learned that people have, it's hard to, find some laws of what change society.
Yes.
And secondly, historically, Russian government, they also learn these tricks, how we can use social work to generate some trust or build relationship.
Yes.
And basically, some way they wants to keep us out of the social work. For example, like I'm a pastor of a small church, and I come to city officials and said, we like a church wants to clean park or do whatever, like need help. You know what he said? He said, well, you wants to through social activity come to the hearts of Orthodox believers to steal their souls. Can you imagine? I was shocked.
No, he's
I said, well, it's my genuine, it's my genuine willingness, to help. But he just really uncover it and make this some how to say theory, and okay, we have to keep you out because especially but of course it's possible. I'm not saying that well, it's hopeless situation. I think that God must to give us some new idea how we can change it and how we can be better than anybody else.
So the task is so huge, that's why you need a team.
Yes, but yeah, we need a team, but I'm kind of in two shoes. One, my teams are European Evangelical Alliance. It's kind of
Sure.
Thomas Bucher and but I'm living in a Russian setting, like in Moscow, and I'm dreaming about how to make evangelical in Russia well known, visual, and well respected. This is my how to say call from God.
Well, I would say focus your team on on your call. With Thomas Brucker, we'll get there with Thomas. Got it. That's it'll work on that. But focus on that call with what you feel called to do locally, and build a team around that. And that team will help with Thomas. There's no doubt. Later.
Well, yeah. But so far, my responsibility, like Thomas already sent you some information. Like I'm working with this McClellan Foundation, keep all this paper straight, stuff like this.
We'll work on that tomorrow. But in terms of who your team is to say, what if we had a team? And the same thing we talked about with Patricia. They met once a month, third Friday, fourth Friday, and we just talk and pray about how we can reach our city. And then if there's a way we can help you, because what you're experiencing has been experienced a lot of other places, even in the United States. There's a large church in Fort Worth that went to help an elementary school. And the principal said, we don't want you here because you're going to talk about Jesus. That's not allowed in our laws. We don't want anything to do with you. You cannot help our elementary school. Stop it. Okay. And so they said, okay. So they went to another elementary school and they said, well, you can paint these buildings, but you can't talk about Jesus. So they painted the end rooms. And in doing so, they were so winsome. He goes, okay, you can now paint the hallway, but no talking about Jesus. So they did. And it's like, okay, I like you. Y'all are not just weird. Okay, you can do your after school reading program with young people, but you can't talk about Jesus. So they started doing that. Then it's like, the kids are loving this. Okay, you can paint, you can do the after school reading program, but you can also do that program with adults that are parents to help them do reading programs. Because in our setting, if you're not reading by the third grade, what happens is you go in a totally different direction as a young person. So a lot of people in poverty that don't read by the third grade, they don't finish school. That's such a huge measurement for us. And so the church all of a sudden is surrounding the school. So the next thing we know, the principal's going, okay, y'all can talk about Jesus now. Okay. But be careful. And after that, I mean, it's kind of getting, the camel's nose under the tent and going. And so the other schools watching that. So finally, the principal of the other school said, okay, I was wrong. Can you come do some of these things for us too? Because the reading levels of the third graders in that second school started going up very substantially. There's ways our government measured that. And so all of a sudden, the metrics in that one school are going up, the metric in the other school is going down. And so this guy finally comes over, so you say, where has God opened up a door? But I think half of leadership is just being stubborn, just persistently following what God has called you to do and just listening and waiting. But for you, building a team around that calling you have for shaping in your own neighborhood, your own city, your own country, have a team. Kind of like we talked about for Shisha, that meets at least once.
Yeah.
Cast the vision.
Like, well, what, for example, like we have a team of Russian Evangelical Alliance, people who really care about unity among evangelicals. They really kind of, have prayer going on, but it's kind of not many people, but of course God can use and work through anybody. Secondly, we have this like several confession: Baptists, Pentecostals, Charismatics, and Seventh Adventists. Even they have some agreement, but they sometimes fight with each other, and especially when there's resources available, they want to pull to different four angles. But I think we need your help, your ideas, what can be done. I try to develop work with international business society here in Russia, because lots of people from internationally working in Russia, they selling their products, but they are or afraid or unwilling to support local church, or it's prohibited for them. And I need international connections to say, like, if you made money here, you should somehow support local church or something, public organization or something like this.
And some of it is just an intentional team that you meet with on a regular basis. And so, as we talk about this particular course, the first thing we wanted everybody to do is, how do I change my identity about fundraising away from begging to just a wonderful calling of God? It is a wonderful calling of God.
Well, it is, yeah. It is. I agree. And, I done it, especially when I have a goal, something like, for example, I was raise money for National Prayer Breakfast for 7 years alone, I was doing like a bulldozer, but people not they just give money to go away from me,
and that's
they're not they're not willing to stay on a team. And what professor told, they wasn't really sharing this goal with me. They just say, okay, like Vitaly call again, okay, I will give him some amount of money, and he's gonna be gone several more months. And right now, for example, economy is kind of really not very good, and people, especially those who in business are really not willing to spend a lot of money for something. And
sometimes if you have people on the team, they feel like they're a part of it and they have ownership, and people like to give to goals that they had a part of forming.
Yes, but for example, I can count on my fingers how many strong business people we have in Moscow. I mean, evangelicals.
If there's four of them, put a team together.
Well,
God would do,
each of them have their own church where pastor expecting get some money from them.
Well,
They
maybe
have all they have all
maybe your team is
denominations.
just sharing vision and saying, okay, I'm not asking you for money right now, but can we pray and talk about how we can change how evangelicals are viewed in our country?
Yeah. I'm agree. This is like, we have to start not with money, because they're expecting people gonna ask for money. I said, well, let's pray for unity. Let's do something what can benefit Church of Christ.
And a lot of times you don't lead with starting for money, and maybe you never do, but you say, but even if you have a vision team, that vision team can be encouraging to you while you go raise money. You may not be raising money from them or with them. It's just, you can't, it's too big of a job to do by yourself.
Yes, it's too big, and like, you never know what's to, for example, you need money for like this and that and etc., and for some personal support and whatever, and it's hard to say, well, where to start, something like this.
So one of the most stubborn people I've ever met is Zanette, and she is just never gives up. So Zanette, in building a team, because you have done this multiple places, what advice would you give to all of us about how to build a team for vision sharing, for encouragement, and then in some cases for fundraising together?
Well, when I'm passionate about something, I talk about it a lot. So I talk about it to people. And before you know it, there's one or two from among the 100 people you have spoken with who will share your dreams, who will share your vision. And that's where you usually start. And I think when you're passionate about something, it rubs off on the other person. And I think that's how you start building a core group of people. Like listening to Patricia, I remember I'm in her exact same position 20 years ago when the Lord put a burden in my heart to start a ministry in the Christian Stewardship Association to offer training in fundraising. And I started with prayer and I started talking about it. I talked to people, I shared them what I wanted to do. And lo and behold, 4 people came on board, and that's how I started my core team. And until now, they're still with us. They're still with me, but I can't do it alone. Can't do it alone. And it's not just because I'm a natural networker, but it's like you said, it's hard enough to do fundraising alone by yourself because it's a lot of things to do. We need people who will be as iron sharpens iron, who can be our support, who can be our cheerleader, and you can find that from among your circle of friends.
So how many people do you ask to be a part of a team for everyone that joins you? Is it 20 people ask and you share the vision with, and out of the 21 join you? What's the percentage?
Well, when I was starting CSA, I called all the seminaries in the Philippines to look who would be a like-minded person, who will be kindred spirit with me. Didn't find anybody. So maybe after talking to 15 different organizations and a lot more individuals, I was able to find a core of 4 people. And until now, they're still champions of
So you
what we do.
maybe I guess you talked to 50 people about this and got
Yeah, talk to 50 people, and you say 10% would listen to you. And if half of that would be on board,
But
I
now
don't mind
they've been
starting
on board for how many years have they been on board with you?
20 years.
Okay, that's the payoff. And how do you feel when you talk to somebody and they reject you? Even just saying, "Would you be involved on my team?" What is that? How do you get past that?
Well, I just move on. I just move on. I was trained in networking. And so if this person is not ready, I move on. Next. I go to the next. I don't take it personally. I'm not bothered by rejection. I just move on. And I like to pick the low-hanging fruit first. So I don't try to keep persuading somebody who is hardcore against what I wanted to do. But there are some people who are more likely to be persuaded or to consider joining you, and I start with that.
That's the way it works. And I know that feels like, wow, 50 people to get 4 people, but 4 people for 20 years, that's worth it.
Yeah.
It is. And they're encouraging and they're praying and they help you. And so building a team around you is just so huge, but it's such an important part of fundraising and vision casting and being together with camaraderie and vision. But it takes some time. Summer, anything you're hearing from Zanette or what I'm talking about that makes sense? So Summer, go ahead.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Beautifully. Whatever you did is perfect now.
Okay. Okay. Yes, I was actually, as Annette was speaking when she said that she had a core team of 4 people. I think there were a couple of questions that came to mind. One was, how long did it take? I know she was speaking of, like, you know, she was just excited about the project and passionate. And so, you know, when we encounter people, just, you know, the importance of sharing what our vision is and what God has placed on you know, our hearts. But I was curious just how long it took to kind of formulate that team. And then I think for me, my biggest drawback or apprehension is because I'm still, like, I know what I want to do, right? I know what the call is in terms of supporting young women and girls. But because, like, for example, like my white paper is not all the way together, and you know, there's, I'm still working kind of on the formal processes and making sure that that's A1. I'm always like, okay, I can explain to them what I know God has called me to do, but I'm not in a position to readily sort of formally explain, like, what the structure will be, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So I think that for me creates some sort of, like, I don't want to tell people this, and they're like, oh, okay, so what's your plan? You know, because I'm kind of like, well, that's what I'm telling you for, because I need help with the plan, you know? So it's kind of this catch-22 situation for me, if that makes sense.
So Zanette, how did you recruit your team when you didn't have your plan totally together? And how do you do that? How does that get involved?
Well, first I'd like to answer the question of Summer. How long did it take me? I think from the time I had that burden, the Lord gave me that vision. And it was, in the beginning, it wasn't a very clear vision. I didn't know what form it will take, because it took some time. When the Lord gives you a vision, it takes time for it to be very, very clear. About a year, and by the time a year has passed, found those 4 people. I think it was mostly from calling up my network of friends, those who are already in the ministry, and I approach people who are most likely to have the same interest. And I think the first organized meeting, formal meeting I had about 10 or 12 people joined that meeting, and I was just sharing the vision. And out of the 12 people who came, 4 came on board.
So how did they
Okay.
deal with the fact you didn't have your plan together? Were they frustrated by that?
No, it took us another year or so of praying, strategizing, brainstorming. One of the 4 core members was good with facilitating brainstorming sessions, vision casting. We did that for about a year, and after, on the second year, we more or less knew what sort of direction we wanted to go. Because in the beginning, it wasn't clear. I just wanted to do something to make a difference. It was
think
like,
that,
yeah.
I was
Yes,
going to say, I
Summer.
think that is reassuring, because to hear you say, okay, I didn't really have it all together either. I just kind of knew what God was showing me and the direction. And then to also say that for another year, you were prayerful, you all were prayerful and kind of did some brainstorming and vision casting. I think that is helpful, because I think sometimes, when God gives you a vision for something, or you have something that you want to do, you're not quite sure how to execute it. You just know like that it's something that you should do. But then I think it's just reassuring to hear like you can take some time, right, to work with the team that God you, or the people that God gives you, to work through it. And it doesn't have to be like, okay, let's jump out there tomorrow, and so it's helpful.
Thank you.
We talk a lot about just the theology of the garden, okay? And so today, when we try to do something and we fail, or we just are not far enough along, there's sometimes shame that comes with that. And we feel like when somebody comes along and says, well, your white paper's not ready yet, it doesn't have enough detail to it, or why would you recruit me to something? I don't understand what you're talking about. We feel shame, like we've got to go disappear and fix it and then deliver it back in a perfect setting. But I believe, like before Adam and Eve ate the fruit, I think the way it worked is they would be doing something. And that evening, in the cool of the evening, Adam and Eve would be walking with God, and Adam and Eve would say, we were trying to build a building and the thing collapsed. What do you think? And God might have said, well, have you ever thought about putting a center pole in there? Oh, that's a great idea. But in that setting, there's not shame. Every failure, every shortcoming, every process is a process, a way to learn. And so Adam and Eve never felt like, oh, I'm ashamed that I had to be corrected by God. In some ways, they say that mistake was a great way for us to learn something new. And so as we're the new Adams and Eves, all creation is groaning, waiting for us to be fully revealed. And so part of our process is to change that narrative in our head to say, even though I don't have my white paper finished and probably won't for a couple of years, I mean, it's a process. The whole point of even the white paper is to start intentionality, writing things down, but recognizing it's very dynamic. And even though I don't have all my vision together, and even though I'm not sure exactly what God is calling me to do, let me recruit some colleagues, some friends, some people that can be join with me. And rather than hearing their questions, what are we doing and how should we do this, as an area of shame, say the questions are really a way to, as garden creatures living in the ghetto, someday be restored in the city, the New Jerusalem, how do we have this as a learning experience, a journey together in which we're not in shame, but we're learning and enjoying each other and enjoying the process of not knowing and seeking God for discernment and relying and help and asking each other for help in places we can't do ourselves. And I know that's a change of mindset that makes sense, but it's a change of narrative. We all have self-narratives that come from being born in a fallen world as fallen creatures. And so what I hear from Zanette is she has a mindset to say, of course I'm going to invite people in, and of course I'm going to tell them I really don't know exactly what I'm doing, but let's pray together, and I have no shame about that. Let's just do it together, and in the process, we're all going to learn, and it's a great process of worshiping God and enjoying each other and growing further. So does that make sense? Zanette, how would you help us with the shame of not knowing and trying to recruit people in and being afraid of them criticizing us? Any thoughts you have on that?
Well, I think oh, is there an echo? Am I echo? Am I okay?
We can hear you. It's good.
I think when you're really passionate about something and you know it's a calling from God, then that really puts the perspective right, and your focus is obeying what the Lord has called you to do, and I firmly believe, because I really am very positive about the Lord for giving you the provision, uh, getting you to the right people, providing all the resources. When He calls you, He equips you. So I don't despair if people reject me or don't try to buy into what I try to convince them to do. So like I said, I just move on and try to find the right person. So I am not bothered if I get negative criticism or they think it's a crazy idea. I just move on, because I know deep inside me, if I am pretty sure it's God calling me to do, then He's gonna provide me with the resources, and that includes people, because people are very important.
Good advice. So, Mark, we're talking about building our teams to help us with vision casting and vision formation, as well as fundraising. So, Mark, how is your team? What team are you thinking about, and where are you in the process of building a team to travel along with you? So, Mark, go ahead.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Well, for me, it started out as a daunting process as well, because of the reality of just not having the resources, and also based on my experience working with the wrong people, so to speak. I have somewhat learned, and Vida has helped me a lot with this in terms of being patient and waiting on
This
God.
is Vida Ram, who's
Yes,
the BGU representative in the Caribbean. So Vida is in Guyana, but she coaches people throughout the Caribbean. So go ahead.
yes. So thank you, Brad. So that has sort of changed my mindset. And as Zinette said just now, if it is that God calls you to do something, then He will provide the resources. And so just having that frame of mind allows you to learn from the experiences, and that has been helpful for me. So what I have been focused on for the past couple of months is really doing the legwork, because I think, well, in my experience, we can get excited and ready to start and ready to get out there and ready to make a difference, etc. But when you reach on the platform, then you realize that, oh, I did not consider this, or oh, I did not get this done, or oh, perhaps this person isn't the right person for the team. So I've been taking some time just to pace myself, talk to different persons about the ideas that I have, and gradually bring it together. And what that time has done is allowed me to sort of refine what the vision is, and it also teaches you what not to say, or what to say, or who to go to instead of who. And so I don't think that I have reached where I want to reach as yet, but the journey has been good in terms of learning and having better strategies in my toolkit. And so far, I've been able to garner the support of one person, which is amazing, because I mean, one is bigger than zero. And so getting excited about one sort of creates that assurance that it's possible for another, but it's a process.
That's well said. Yeah, it is. One person's better than zero. And,
Yeah.
and now you have two people, and they help you get the third person. And
Yes.
doesn't take a lot, but a few that really are faithful and just are part of that. And so our job as a school is to create, peer learning among the faculty and staff and students to help that happen. And so I'm glad that Vida is an encourager, and she's, of course,
Yes, absolutely.
but we all help each other, and this is how we move forward. And so we need encouragement as we start building our teams. But teams are so important to vision casting and sustainability and health and fundraising eventually. So
Indeed.
sharing that. So I love that quote. One is better than zero. It's good.
Yes.
So Abedar, in Ethiopia, how is your team? Where are you in the process of building your team for vision, encouragement, and fundraising? So Abedar, go ahead. She may be having problems then. Okay, go ahead. I see your, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me?
If you could lean a little further into your microphone to get closer, we'll have a little better volume.
Okay. Am I okay now?
That's much better. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning for some of you. In EIM, there is a team. Actually, the team is already there. I start to write my white paper. Try to pick it the key, the motivating vision, because it's refocused, as I jotted down in my paper. So the refocus to bring it upscale for the team. The team is now about 14 people. I just communicate like 5 of them till now, including the full timer. So we are excited about the thing, but we are not sure how to make it public, and how to make it in media, and how to make it that way. If otherwise, we are so encouraged, and we got a lot of lessons from the videos, from the reading assignments. After I read the assignment and after I see the video, I'll share for the team. So for those 5 people. Normally, we are not living in Addis, every one of us, but 2 of us will live in Addis. So 2 of us communicate frequently. This is where we are.
So has that been helpful to share with the team, and how have they responded to that?
Actually, when I share them, it's their vision, so everybody is excited, actually. But we are not sure which direction we are going to move. That one, clarity and all these things are still needed. If otherwise, in EIM, most of them are professionals and something like that. So everybody is excited.
Mm-hmm. Good. So Zanette, thank you for joining us today. I understand she has to leave for a board meeting, but thank you for being a part of this. And Abadayar, thank you for sharing about your team. So at this point, that's probably the most important step. Let me share with where we are in terms of just what this course is designed to do. And so we spent some time talking about that we are not beggars in this role, to have a team, to be persistent in building that team. We worked on messaging our white paper, and then you've learned wider resources. And a lot of what the tool of these we've done is given you videos and what's out there. So now we're moving into some specific skills. And what I'll probably do, I wanted to spend the time this morning talking more about team. But there's one of the exercises you did this week was to look up in a database, just one of the databases that actually was developed by a fellow student who's now alumni, on how you actually research based upon your topic or region, how you might find foundations that are interested in that. Now we're focusing on foundation fundraising right now, only because it's what you learn there is also helpful for major donors, but you don't have to do it at that level for major donors. And then we talk about how you research a specific foundation website to learn what they fund and don't fund, and then how to craft a letter of inquiry, which some of y'all have done, they look good, and how to transfer that letter to a full proposal. So what I want to do is just with that, I'm going to demonstrate with a foundation. Let me just go ahead and start with that. I'm going to go ahead and go into Chrome and share that in just a second. And this is actually one that has one of the better websites. And let me agree to that. And so, but this is pretty typical. So I'm going to do a share screen here. So let's say that you had determined that this foundation, which is called the McClellan Foundation, was a foundation that, and it was one that in your research you said they might give to my calling. This is based in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And so if you notice, what they've done here is they start with describing who they are. And you start with who we are. What I actually do is when I go onto one of these websites, I get a word processing document and I go through this and I'm really trying to listen very carefully to how they state what they do and why they do it. So here's the background. And you know, everything they put on here, there's a reason why they do that. And you're trying to approach them to see if of what they're doing is consistent with what you're asking for. And so they give you their history, and their history is important. And so it's, let me see if I can figure out how to get back. Okay, so here's the McClellan Foundation's site. So then when I look at something like this, I would look at their mission. And what I would probably do is actually take a word processing document. At the top of it, I would say the McClellan Foundation. And then I would literally take this and copy this and put it there. That way, every time I'm writing something to them, it's right in my mind on that word processing document exactly how they state what they want to do. Then I would probably take these values. And excellence is a key word. Intentional is a key word. So if I'm going to write a letter of inquiry, and when I write my proposal, guess what words I'm going to be using? Excellence and intentional, if that's part of what I'm trying to accomplish in my proposal. Church-centric, I'm going, okay. And Vitaly, when we talk about this tomorrow, notice that part of the World Evangelical Alliance, the European Evangelical Alliance, always focuses at some point on the local church. They're doing that. We see collaboration, okay. I know that if I'm going to do a proposal for them, the more I can show that I'm collaborating with other organizations, that's going to be consistent with their values. We aim to honor God through excellence, integrity, and prayer. I need to make sure my proposal to them, and even in my letter of inquiry, continues to hold these values. We strive for measured transformational impact. I need to, in my proposal, make sure I show them in very specific ways how we are measuring the impact, and it's transformational, meaning it's going to transform myself as transformational leader, and I'm going to, through myself being transformed, I'll be transforming others in the community. And then if you notice, they've given us the areas of focus. And I usually just copy this so I have it in a word processing document. It's always in front of me whenever I'm dealing with them. Telephone call, letter of inquiry, proposal, all of these things I'm in front. So they partner with that are offering individuals the opportunity to set a new identity in Jesus, and they see these individuals worshiping together in a unified local church. They're telling us what they say. If you come to me with a fundraising proposal and we can give money to something like this, you've done us a favor. So we're into that communion of giving and receiving. We're listening very carefully, although they're not talking to us, they are talking to us in this website. What would this relationship be? Is this something that's important to them? If I'm going to have communion with this donor group, and by the way, they have $800 million, okay, and their corpus, I think, is, if last I counted, they give away money. It's a big foundation. So if I am in conversation with them, I want to know what they care about. I want to know what they are interested in. And if I give them an opportunity to give their money to something that fits their values, they're going to say, thank you, thank you. We are so, praise God for this relationship. But I'm listening first, and they're talking to me on their website. So they want to see local churches. They want to see worshiping together. They want to see developing leaders, partner with the organizations who see leadership development as a necessity for excellence. Notice how much excellence is used in their framework. When you go to their offices in Chattanooga, their offices are very well apportioned. We'll put it that way. Mahogany walls. Everything is about excellence. One of their principals, Hugh McClellan, lives in a beautiful house. I've been to dinner with him. It's always just, there's a sense of excellence. He's a very precise and detailed man. And this is part of who he is. This is part of who God has called him to be. And he wants to make sure that other people are consistent with that. And notice again, local church, a vibrant, indigenous local church. And so, Vitaly, as we talk tomorrow about this particular foundation, you're seeing a lot of connection points between the mission of the European Evangelical Alliance and the Foundation. Prayer and scripture, and evangelism, generosity, and developing organizations that are needing to move towards self-sustainability, which means they're interested in giving capacity grants. So, so what happens is most foundations will have this stated, and you just listen well, copy it down on a piece of paper, and just have that always in front of you. Now, here's the knowledge base that they have. So let me pull that out. So here's some common questions that you might have before you write your letter of inquiry. Remember, on a foundation, you go into, and we'll talk about their portal, you go in and first write a letter of inquiry. Here's a short letter of what want to ask you for. Will you give me permission to then ask for a proposal? Often they require a letter of inquiry, and if they say, yes, we're interested, not promising we'll give you money, but we're interested enough from your letter of inquiry, now we open up our portal for you. Here's your code. Here's how we can do it. We invite you to do a full proposal. A letter of inquiry is not that long, and now, and they'll have a format we can look at. But a full proposal is often quite long. And so here, if you notice, here's just goes into their foundation. And so it says, will you provide me advice on my project? And they said, we don't provide consultation services. We don't have that capacity, but we do have a knowledge base, which we'll look at in just a second. Do you repose proposals by mail or email? They'll tell you we don't. The only way you're going to get in is through our portal. And because we just can't accept those ways. Remember, they're telling you, you're listening well to the person. Are you able to provide individual feedback on your submission? The question is no. Due to the high volume, we can't. But if you would go ahead and send a letter of inquiry and then look at our knowledge base, you can learn more about us. So notice what they're saying is early on, if you want a relationship with us, you need to work through our system. You need to work through our website, because there's so many people asking for that relationship. We can't do that. How do I access the grant portal? And it says here is that to edit your submission, visit our grant portal. You must log in or create a new username, and then you must go that way. And we'll talk about this, how to do that. So let me go back to the home, go over here. And so now let's look at their grant pathway. And notice this is by almost every foundation that you look at will have something like this. We grant initiatives that align with our mission. You must proceed to our privacy policy. Yes. And so, yes, I agree. We go this way. And so then what happens? Are you a registered U.S. public charity? So this is so Vitaly and I are going to work on this tomorrow. The Eastern European Alliance is not a registered U.S. public charity. So what's going to happen is he is going to use the 501c3 of the World Evangelical Alliance, which is a public charity registered in the District of Washington, D.C. And so it'll go through that portal to do that. So if you're going to raise money in the U.S., and from not every foundation requires it, they don't have to, but most do, you may have to find a U.S. public charity partner. There's ways to do that. We can help you with strategies on that. That's not that difficult. But in this case, let's say we're doing this with Vitaly, we would say yes, because it's not the Eastern European Alliance, the European Alliance, Evangelical Alliance, it's the World Evangelical Alliance on behalf of them. Where will your project be implemented? And notice they're saying, and so let's say I'm just proceeding forward what Vitaly and I are going to do. What is your mission statement? You copy in the mission statement. And if you notice, what they're doing is they're just taking you through their portal in the way they want to talk to you. So this is very normal for a foundation to say, if you want a relationship with us, first you must listen to us. Secondly, you must talk to us in a language that is consistent with how we listen best, given a lot of people are talking to us. It just so happens that the white paper exercise that you did is exactly aligned with how most of these portals are set up, because it was Rob Martin who's advised many of these, including McClellan, because he's actually been one of their top advisors on how to set up their letter of inquiry portal and their grant portal. So let me stop at this point. How many of you have done this before and found this to be confusing or helpful, have advice for us? What jumps out to you as I just shared that? What questions do you have about that if you were going to do that yourself? Is that a whole new thing? So, Patricia, I'm going to call on you. What do you think about what I just showed? Is that something new? And obviously, CCDA has whole ways to do this. Go ahead, Patricia.
So first of all, I thought that was a very helpful walkthrough. That is pretty much the approach that I would take. So there's a whole component to, how the Lord has been equipping me. And, my master's was in nonprofit management. And so a big part of that is proposal writing. Right now in my work at the land bank and where I work with ministries, they submit proposals to me. So I've been looking at some of my role right now in part of my work is I almost see myself to a degree as a program manager who people are often submitting proposals because they want the land bank to either donate a house, or I've been managing for a year now the land bank where I work. In addition to donating houses to people, we donated a total of $230,000, which I helped to allocate to 11 different organizations. And so when they approach me, sometimes I'm working with very grassroots organizations. And so I walk them through the process of knowing like how to approach us. And I've set all of this up at my organization because we were a new organization. And I usually set it up so that when they finish working with us, they're better equipped to go to like a foundation or a larger funder. So I certainly am familiar with that. And I think one of the keys that I would tell to anyone, and I tell to myself and all of my classmates here, is I think just that organization you were pointing out was talking about excellence. And I think that being at a place, and it fits right in with talking about the team, we've been talking about this morning, being at a place where the organization, once you approach a funder and they begin to look at who you are, they want to see a team. They want to see sustainability. They want to see some good excellence in how the organization's operated. So I think this is wonderful. What we've been doing is just thinking about how can we form a core team that can help us set up something where we can be accountable, where we can just set up good systems to form those measures and all of that. So yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing.
So Patricia, as you remember in the white paper, there's actually the last question is how will you know if you did it? How will you measure it? And in the Peter Drucker 5 questions, the fourth question is the measurement question. That's always going to be huge in any foundation grant, and actually to some degree most major donor grants, unless it's a close relationship. And so, but it's often hard if you are in the trees to know how to measure it. It's often a board member or a friend that can look at it from the forest perspective, looking down broader, that can really help determine how is some of the biggest ways to measure it, the most important ways to measure it. So again, a team is important for the multiplicity of gifts, but also even their perspective. They're not day-to-day in the work. Often they can help you communicate measurement and key core values in a way that you cannot, just because you're in the trees, not in the forest. And that team is important. So Patricia, I hear though that you could actually coach all of us, and somebody that could also just be helpful with your perspective of reading grants and preparing people to write grants, to be a coach as people are thinking about their own approach.
Yeah, and it's really coming up so much. This is all part of this place where I am in life right now. I probably have about at least 3 or 4 organizations right now who are like, can you help us, that very thing. So, and I'm just prayerful about, the Lord has so wonderfully, and I'm thankful. Equipped me with a lot of things, and giving me a lot of experience. And I'm just asking him where and how he really wants me to use that.
And that goes with the mantle, by the way. Most people that I've described this city mantle that God puts on somebody, often they are ones that are coaching people to come together in relationship for larger grants. And so some founders, funders do not want to give to 4 different organizations. They'd rather give to an umbrella that has 4 different organizations in it. It's just an easier way for them to interact. And so a lot of times the role of that city, the person that has a city leadership mantle, actually is that person that helps that happen. And we see that through the Leadership Foundation. So Dave Hillis, that's a lot of actually what they do in that network. There's an alignment between CCDA and Leadership Foundations, and I can share that at some point. Dave Hillis is a BGU graduate, as is most of the Leadership Foundation leaders. But that's kind of one of their core values to the city and all the different people that are part of a Leadership Foundation, is to create composite grant requests to the government or to a foundation. And so that's part of the mantle. So God is already proceeding in your mantle. So that makes sense. Summer, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. I always laugh. You consistently talk about this city mantle. It's so funny to me. And I receive it and I pray over that and ask God to give me more insight about that for sure.
So at least I am persistent. Okay. So stubborn. So Summer, as you saw me walk through the McClellan Foundation, I know you've done things like this before. What comes to mind on how you might do something like that for a foundation? You've got the First Fruits back in your backyard. You've got some other foundations, Amundsen Foundation, all of which might be possible donors to your effort. What jumps out to you in terms of this exercise?
I just think the importance of going through, the website and all of that with the fine-tooth comb to essentially give the foundation, sort of those buzzwords, if you will, in terms of what will at least get them interested in further looking at your project or what God has placed on your heart. I think that is key, and it actually is kind of reminiscent of, to be honest, like writing a cover letter, right? Or when you're seeking employment, or, to really look at, okay, what is the organization about or the job, and giving those words back just to, one, kind of let people know that, you're kind of aligned with what they do, so that it doesn't feel like what to help you here. You don't seem to understand what we're about.
And that's how a normal relationship starts. So you meet a stranger, right. You're having a conversation, you find that there's a lot of commonness in values and perspective and interest, and then you share that and they share their interest, and that's a very normal way a relationship starts. That's all that's happening here, is the foundation has initiated the conversation by saying, here's what we're interested in, and you're listening and saying, am I interested in that too? Do I have the same values? If I do, I'm now replying to them, although it's through a web portal, it's on an internet system, but I'm replying to them in the conversation to build the relationship that, yes, I do. And I think that there's some value that they would give to me in the relationship, and there's value that I would give to them in the relationship. And so when we think about these portals, when they're done well and McClellan does it well, they're saying, if you want a relationship with us, and we would like to have a relationship with you, if your value is consistent, here's how you could communicate that to us, so then we can move more and more into a personal conversation, not a web screened conversation. So it's exactly what you're describing. It's like a job interview. It's all those are the beginning of a relationship. Mark, anything you see in this that you jumps out, that you have some wisdom or thoughts on or questions?
Well, for me, it's just about learning from the process. I guess that's the greatest wisdom that I have experienced so far, and taking note of that in terms of building capacity and clarifying what it is that you're working towards, the support will come. But it's very important that the project that you're working on is precise and clear and sustainable. And so the work related to making sure that that is the case is very critical. And so I'd encourage us not to take that for granted while we are waiting on the partnerships or waiting on the donations or waiting on the assistance. There is still work to be done in terms of whether it's the organization or the calling or even your own personal development and transformation.
Good word. That makes sense. Makes sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm just thinking through our time today because I don't want to hold us later. What you see here in terms of how to transfer what you've written into a full proposal, a lot of that white paper, and again, the white paper is always dynamic. You're working on it. You're giving that to your team members. They're shaping it. If it's a board, they're approving it. Yes, that's how we want to state what we do and what we don't do. That's how we are committed to measure what we do. But once you get into writing a proposal, often all you're doing is looking at the questions they're asking, because most of these, and when you get into the McClellan portal, which I would encourage each of you to sign in, those of you that don't have 501c3s, let's talk about strategies, a way to do that. And maybe you wouldn't use McClellan, but somebody else. But when you write a letter of inquiry, they ask you usually a certain amount of words to express who you are. A lot of that you're pulling things from your white paper and just literally cutting and pasting, reshaping it a little bit inside of the letter of inquiry. Once they say, yes, we're now interested in your letter of inquiry, we'd like a full proposal, they open up the next portal, and often it's a lot of questions, and it can take a day minimum just to fill out the questions and think about it and have your budget clear. But you're answering it to a set of boxes on an internet. It's a portal. But often that comes out of the white paper. All you're doing is taking that white paper, using the exact same language in your white paper, but depending on their question, adding more detail. How would I measure it specifically? What exactly is the budget over the next 3 years? And what aspect of that budget would I be asking money from? And you're going through, but the white paper still forms kind of the core outline for how you do proposal. So that's why that white paper, first of all, getting it right makes a consistent messaging on your websites, requests to major donors, requests to foundations, conversations with your board, conversations with volunteers. It gives you a consistency of message. The second thing a white paper does is saves you time, because if you start applying to a lot of foundations, rather than having to write things all over, you're literally cutting and pasting the language of your white paper. And then later, after the letter of inquiry, when you're writing your proposal, you go back and you start using that white paper again and just adding detail to it. So the white paper is an important exercise for messaging, not only just internally, but also for applying for foundation grants. What I think I'm going to do is we're going to stop now, and I'll put together probably a way to bring in Richard Nongard to help us with this next step. And all this is and then we'll talk about websites. We'll do that in a different time. But what I want to talk about in terms of search engine optimization, and most of you know this, but when you go to Google and you type in a word and you say, I would like to know the word discipleship, who's doing something on discipleship? The way that Google analogs work is there is a process, and Google is saying what websites are using the word discipleship a lot, okay? Secondly, what websites that are using discipleship a lot seem to have a lot of traffic. A lot of people are already going to it, and so we would become heroes to the person in the search engine if we direct them to some place that other people have already gone. And so they know all this, of course, which is interesting that once you get traffic to your website, it actually increases more traffic to your website, which increases more traffic to your website. What website has YouTube videos that in the description behind the YouTube videos, they have the word discipleship? What websites have links to other websites that have the word discipleship in it? what websites have articles on there that are dynamic. They're seeing a lot of activity. They're being changed and updated that have the word discipleship in it. And if your website has all this dynamic connections, links, use of that word, all of a sudden you may come up on the first page. Another way to do that is to buy an AdWord. And so that then if you buy an AdWord, every time somebody searches and comes from that search on Google on discipleship to your page, you have to pay them 40 cents, 50 cents. That's not always the best way to do that. So by designing your social media strategy on your websites, your YouTube videos, your papers, your links to other organizations, you can create more traffic to your website, which helps people find you to buy services and products from you if that's what you're doing. But certainly from a donor perspective, it sees that you are one of the more important organizations in the world, even though they're judging it just from the website and the Google search, in the topic of discipleship, which makes you more attractive to give money to. And so there's a strategy behind that, but the whole strategy starts with coming up with the top 10 search engine words, the words that describe you that you want to be known by. Often you'll find those words in your mission statement, you'll find those words in your white paper, you'll find those words in your conversation. So let me stop at this point. That's a very quick, and we'll do more detail on that. But if you had to come up with the search engine optimized words, Summer, what words would you say, 4 or 5 words that you would say, I would like to be known as the organization, one of the organizations that is an expert in these words? Summer, what comes to your mind in your order?
I would say women's equality, empowerment, though I'm not quite sure how to connect the word socioeconomic would be, and the words socioeconomic and education are important to me just because I feel like when education is addressed, particularly with underserved communities, then the socioeconomic status can also be addressed, which would in turn help empower, if that makes sense.
So what you've said is, so you can't own the word education, okay? You're never going to get the top page for that. But what Google analogs do is they actually connect words. And so education in underserved communities, and you might say, okay, that's a phrase that I will intentionally use over and over and over and over and over again. Literally what I do is I have a piece of paper and I have a document that when I'm writing stuff on the internet, writing even on different blogs, responding to different blogs, I use certain core phrases over and over again, and it's always connected to my BGU website. And so what's happening with that is I'm intentional, understanding how the internet works, and I think about how do I keep using that phrase over and over again. And I coach the people in my organization to use these phrases. And I think about if I do a YouTube video, I put that phrase in the description of the YouTube video, a Vimeo video. I'm using that. I ask partners who are using those phrases to link to my website. So there's, and I know that feels like it's very manipulative, but the internet is a structure that everybody learns the rules and tries to manipulate it so that more eyes get on your web page. But it all starts with exactly what you just did, is what are the core phrases I want to be known for that's part of my mission. So is that's, I know that's not a new way of thinking, but the intentionality behind it actually is very important to marketing, but it's also important to fundraising in that a lot of donors will validate if you're an important organization or not in the area that they're looking at your grant request, because you're going to use those same phrases in your grant proposal, and they want to see consistency in your proposal, how you're worded on your website, and how other people view you around those core phrases and words. That makes sense. But the ones you've used, I think, are powerful. So, Patricia, what are you thinking about that whole approach to search engine optimization? Just the basic 101 that I just shared.
Yeah. So as you know, I've been kind of framing this class around the idea of potentially doing the Greater Cleveland Center for Community Transformation. Very prayerful about that. The Lord would really have to lead me because I see bits and pieces of it, but I'm not sure. So in that context, if I, were to move forward with the local CCT in our Cleveland region, I think the words that come to mind is maybe something like equipping the regional church for community transformation, or say that again. I'm sorry, a text came in while you were speaking.
You want to have Cleveland in there, so equipping the Cleveland local church, something like that.
Yes. Yes. So probably that equipping, I know those are kind of generic words, so those aren't as important, but equipping, training the Greater Cleveland local church for effective community transformation. I may put in there of under-resourced communities. I like the words. I think that gets to the crux of what is in my heart is definitely transformation, definitely under-resourced communities, definitely the local church or the local church or Christian believers to in transformation. Something like that is really, important to me, that I think is what the whole CCT is. I think there's going to be many roads to that transformation, but I think it's really helping them to focus inwardly to under-resourced communities and to expand their capacity to effectively transform under-resourced communities, something like that.
I like that. That makes sense. So, so the thought behind all of this is we start intentionally thinking about what words would we use, and put them down on a piece of paper, think about them, shape them, and start, thinking about how we would use those. But they all would feed into a website, or they all feed into some place that it's linked to. And so let me work on talking to Richard Nongard, and he can give us a coaching session on how to do that. Most of you I know, like Patricia, you're probably not ready to build a website around this. But again, you start thinking about this. Abedar, you already have a website from what I understand. And so, but it would be actually, working harder to be more intentional about the search engine optimization to that website. But those are just some things to begin to think about that are important for fundraising and marketing, and it's about consistency. So just, start maybe taking notes on what words display your calling, what words really come out in terms of display your organization in consistent ways. I want to be conscious of our time. We try to do this course in an hour and a half. Any questions, final thoughts, concerns, anything that you would like to express before we close today?
This is Patricia. I said a little bit in our chat that I just sent to you, but I thought it was a very good time together. I really, and I might send her a separate message. I really appreciated Zanette. I think she just brings such I really gleaned from her confidence and her just kind of poise in the direction that she's trying to go. And that was really helpful. And it also put it in perspective for me as kind of being where I am on the journey. And you had asked me the question first, and I was saying how, well, some people, I don't know if they're going to fall off or things like that. But then when I was hearing, that was a great question you asked Zanette, like, well, how many people have you talked to? And I know I've not talked to anywhere near 50 people for sure. And so that just kind of gave me encouragement just to keep, and sometimes I feel like in some circles, I do sound like the broken record. Maybe they're like, okay, I know Patricia's going to bring up like, Christian community development and training there, and it's funny. I see people try to cater to that. They don't quite understand, but hearing Zanette encouraged me to say, this is what's on your heart. Keep saying it, and those who resonate with that, they will emerge. And When I went to Chicago for the immersion for a week, I think I told you about, one of the things I really walked away with from that was just the timeline, so to speak, that I'm on in this process. They always talk about, if you're, think 15, 20 years, and there's a good balance in that. Obviously, you don't want to be lackadaisical. You don't want to be a poor steward. But at the same time, I'm gaining a lot more peace with that. This is a long-term journey, building these relationships, putting together the teams, forming any relevant organizations and collaborations. So this class, our session today was just really affirming in all of those points. So I appreciated it.
Praise God. And Jeanette's been doing this for a long time. So Patricia, I'll follow up an email on some windows to meet with your group. But she's in the Philippines, but she's available in the mornings, your time, and that's otherwise it gets too late, or in the evening she's up, and so you can think about that. She also will be in North America from the end of September to the December the 18th. And so she'll be in Boston, Nova Scotia. She'll be in Atlanta. She'll be with me in Dallas, Houston. And so there's also opportunities that if you just wanted to get her on a Zoom and just have her share her stubbornness and her persistence and her never give up with your group, she's an amazing resource to tell those stories, even more detailed than what she told today. So.
Awesome. Okay. I will keep that in mind for sure. And I think so much of it, I feel like, and I don't know, over your years, have you seen people from Cleveland? It just seems interesting that all of this dialogue is going on nationally and even internationally. And it's just amazing to me that it seems so foreign to a lot of leaders in Cleveland. So it's like, not only am I like coming with this whole idea of, would you like to talk about this? I'm also overcoming kind of a learning curve, a familiarity curve with this type of discussion about transformation, about, seeing I guess even the church seeing itself, its own identity as real players in shaping how our neighborhoods look and our communities look in a very place-based way.
No, it's a journey, because for so many years the church only saw itself as the church gathered on Sunday morning, and defined the church about a series of programs on Sunday morning and a location. And that's not what the word church means, but that's become the meaning. And so we started a network in the late 1990s called the Externally Focused Church. One of the people I hired became a BGU graduate, wrote a book on it called The Externally Focused Church. Just helping churches to rethink themselves as not just being the church gathered, but also the church scattered. And they're just as viable of a church scattered in the workplace, the community. They're just as much called to make a difference in the community as they are to have a great experience on Sunday morning. It's a whole new thinking about what the word church means and going to an accurate meaning, not a false meaning. But we're here to help. So after they get tired of you saying the same thing, you can bring in Zanette. You can bring in Eric Swanson, is the guy who wrote the book. He's one of your fellow alumni, to come in and say the same thing. So it's like, okay, we thought Patricia was crazy, but she's got a whole bunch of other crazy people, and they're coming in saying the same thing from Manila, from Europe, from Africa. So maybe we need to consider this. And so our task is to equip you to do it, but also to give you a network to help you.
Amen.
So anybody else? Questions, concerns, final comments before we close? So thank you for your time today. Vitaly, would you mind closing us in prayer today? Would you mind doing that? Since you have been awake longer than probably anybody else, I think.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Well, let's pray. Well, Heavenly Father, we thank you for this wonderful meeting, what we had, and thank you for this advice. Help us to build a strong and solid and good teams who can support us in fundraising. Bless us with a good men and women who can stay near us and give us all kind of wisdom what we need. and open the doors for us. Give us courage, give us your grace, and give us, Father, your faith that we have to trust you fully and really believe that you are calling us to do this such difficult but such blessing job, fundraising. Thank you for this university and for our study. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. So thank you. Vitaly, I'm looking forward to our time tomorrow, 2 p.m. your time.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you all for your time today. Thank you for engagement and being a part of this. I really enjoyed the journey. So we'll talk to you later.